Hello, Namaskar, good morning. This is Balneet Singh Bedi. I welcome all of you to the daily news analysis session by Tathastu ICS. Good morning, everyone. So let's start today's session. The first announcement for the GS Foundation batches. The GS Foundation morning batch, evening batch, both have started from 19th of April 2025. And then the philosophy optional 7th of April and PSIR optional 7th of April. Good morning, Kunal. Good morning, Ruchi. Let's start today's session. So in today's newspaper under Mains Manthan, we have three important editorials. The first one talks about the Kurds who's an ethnic group demanding statehood from the countries, but they have not received independence. They have not got their independent state. So we will see where the Kurds are located, and in very short detail we will be seeing everything. Then comes the where tariff trump economics. Again, this is about reciprocal tariffs, the tariff war which is going on across the globe. US blaming China, China blaming USA, and it's related to all of that. Then is WTO still relevant? Again, this is because of the second editorial, the reciprocal tariff. So the editorial is saying whether World Trade Organization is doing its job. It's justifying its job because it's not able to stop the US from imposing tariffs, high amount of tariffs on countries. And what's the role of the WTO? Good morning, Ruchi, Suresh, Priyanka, Abhinandan. Good morning, everyone. Then here, Langia Sora tribal group. Now we will see where this tribal group is located, what's their language, in which all other states they are being found. So the first one, amidst regional ferment, Kurds' quest for statehood. Now this talks about the Kurds' demand for statehood, and it covers GS paper 2, that is international relations. We will not cover the entire editorial because entire editorial is not important from the UPSC perspective. I have read through the entire editorial. Only the important points I've covered, that is where these Kurds are located and the treaty through which they were promised that they will be given an independent nation. So the first Kurdish population, they are spread across 4 countries, that is Turkey, Syria, Iran, Iraq. I repeat, Turkey, Syria, Iran, Iraq. Only these 4 countries. So the Kurds are the world's largest ethnic group without a state, spread across Turkey, Iraq, Syria and Iran. The population is around 35 to 45 million. So they are demanding a separate state, but they have not got one so far, and they are located in these 4 states. After the DNA gets over, I'll give you the PDF. You can have a broader look on the places where they are located. You can see the Syria part, you can see here the Iraq part, then it's the Turkey, there are so many, then as well as Iran region as well. Then comes the next, that is the treaty, the Kurdish quest for statehood. The treaty is Treaty of Severus. The Treaty of Severus. So just you need to have a information. Treaty of Severus related to what? So basically it's related to the Kurds' demand for independence. Historical context date back to Treaty of Severus 1920, promised them a state but thwarted by Turkish nationalists. Since then their aspiration for a homeland, continuous suppression and displacement, particularly by Turkey. Then comes the next editor. Only this much information is needed. The 4 countries, Turkey, Syria, Iran, Iraq, and Treaty of Severus. That is it, right? Then comes where tariff trump economics. Why in news we have discussed, I've discussed this so many times, but again it was today's editorial. It's talking about the impact on Southeast Asian economies, that is Cambodia, Vietnam, then what India needs to do, what China is doing, all sort of we'll cover in very short. Then reciprocal tariff and GS paper 2 international relations. Then comes the first reciprocal tariff and their economic impact. Firstly, what is reciprocal tariff? Suppose I'll give you an example for your better understanding. When a country imposes 25% tariff on country B goods and services, and then country B does tit for tat, country B does reciprocal tariff, and country B also imposes the same amount of tariff on the country A goods and services. So that is reciprocal tariff. These are the taxes levied by one country in response to similar actions from another. Reciprocal, aapne kiya, main bhi karunga. That means in reciprocal terms. So they often lead to negative economic impact such as higher consumer prices, disrupted supply chain, and slower slower growth. How higher consumer prices? Suppose India is importing some sort of petroleum from UAE and we have imposed 25% tariff. Of course, the price of the petroleum would rise in India. So higher consumer prices. Then disrupted supply chain. Nowadays, the supply chain is globally connected. If one country imposes tariffs, the other country gets impacted. So it's disrupting the production efficiency of the manufacturers, as well as slower growth. Why slower growth? As you all know, the economic slower growth, all this lead to the slower growth in the economy, because as I would like to mention the data, IMF in 2019, when there was USA-China war, trade war, USA-China trade war, the GDP was reduced by 0.5%. I'm talking about global GDP. So this is because of the US-China trade war. So that is why slower growth. Impact on global trade. Announcement led to decline in crude oil prices and increased market volatility. Why decrease in crude oil prices? Suppose the manufacturing gets slower. That means trade की demand कम हो रही है, products की demand कम हो रही है. So same way crude oil prices की भी demand कम हो रही है, and that is why the prices have been decreased in order to meet the demand. So it's a demand supply ratio. Increased market volatility as fears grow regarding potential global trade slowdown. Then comes the impact on South Asia and Southeast Asia. So here it's talking about two countries, that is Cambodia and Vietnam. Cambodia, that is garment sector, which employs around 8 lakh workers. So once the all countries, the Southeast Asian countries are very small, their economy is much more dependent on the export. So if US has imposed tariff on such countries, their GDP would fall down, their trade would fall down, and trade would fall down. That would lead to the industry shutdown. That would lead to mass layoff. And that is what it's saying. The countries in South and Southeast Asia have been hit hard, especially Vietnam. What Vietnam? Vietnam is exporting electronics as well as pharmaceuticals, industrial products as well to US. So all this will get impacted. Vietnam is doing this, Cambodia is garment sector, other Southeast Asian economies that rely on exports to US, right? Absolutely, Priyanka, it's a tit for tat situation for the countries. Then what India should do? Now prospects for India, India exports to US may fall by these many billion, that is 6.4% due to the proposed tariff. India broader trade base must be diversified. So what it is saying here, that India must diversify its export basket. For example, we have India UAE, that is Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, where there are 90% of the goods can be exported duty free. Can be exported duty free. So we have India UAE, then we can have India EU free trade agreement, then we can have India and ASEAN free trade agreement. So all these agreements needs to be there. Editorial is talking about that India needs to diversify its export market by shaking hands or by getting in collaboration with the other countries. Now it could be European Union, it could be ASEAN economies, ASEAN Southeast Asian economies, as well as UAE. Then India must pursue a balanced trade deal with US, deepen trade ties, other global players, again EU, UK, Russia, Japan, South Korea, ASEAN and UAE. But as you all know, the Vice President of USA, JD Vance, is in India, and so far he has met the Honorable PM as well, and to some extent by the end of October we'll have some sort of trade deal with USA, and terms of references have already been signed. This has been shared by the second Vice President in the one of the convention centers in Jaipur. So let's see how things will unfold in future. And Indian diplomats are on their toes because we have a time till approx 8th of July. 8th of July, and after that the America's tariff would be imposed again after the 90-day pause. So till that, the Indian diplomats, the Indian officials, the Commerce and Industry Ministry has time to finalize some sort of trade deal or do some sort of trade negotiations with USA. So India should prioritize diversification of its trade partnership. I just explained export diversification by UAE, EU, and then to reduce dependence on any single market. This is very basic. We only can't depend on USA. We need to diversify. We need to talk with other countries as well. India must focus on reforms to make its trade process more efficient, simplifying the GST system and rationalizing tariffs. So we need to simplify the GST system to reduce the cost for exporters. There should be ease of doing business as well. The economic diplomacy through various platforms. That means we need to use BRICS. We need to use SCO. We can also use BIMSTEC. We can't use SARC because of the Pakistan. Otherwise, these three platforms should be used among the regional leaders for economic diplomacy. जो भी problem है, हम इन platforms से आके बात करते हैं and let's figure out things. Seenu, Deepika, good morning, Dheeraj, everyone. Now, the next editorial is the WTO still relevant? As you would be knowing, whatever we have discussed in the previous editorial, on the basis of that, this is that whether WTO is looking what America is doing. If America is imposing 245% tariffs on China, is WTO aware? And if it's aware, what is it doing in order to maintain the global trade free and fair? So we will see here WTO role amidst the tariff war, and it covers GS3 Indian economy as well as GS2 international relations, because we have the syllabus important international institutions, their agencies, mandate and fora. So that's important from that perspective as well. Now, declining relevance of the WTO. WTO, it was established in 1995 as a replacement of General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, right? So 1995, and replace the GATT. Ensure global trade stability, increasingly viewing as ineffective. Now, what are the three main aims of WTO? The first, to negotiate the trade agreement. Then the dispute resolution, as well as to monitor the trade. Here, this is the thing, monitor trade. Is WTO monitoring trade? Is WTO seeing what USA is doing? So that all they need to focus. They need to focus on free and fair trade for all the countries. For all the countries in the globe. Across the globe, right? The WTO inability to address critical issues like agriculture subsidies, fishery agreement, market access has diminished its relevance in the global trade. Even India and Indonesia have asked WTO to not impose any sort of limit on the subsidies being provided to the fishermen because of the they have asked not to put some sort of any limits on the fisheries product, because so many livelihood communities are dependent on the fisheries for their livelihood. Then comes the next, that is US actions and tariff measures. The first, US has raised tariffs on various countries, particularly China, implementing Section 232 and Section 301. Now these sections are mentioned in the editorial, but we will be just seeing what it is about, but we're not gonna get into the detail, right? Section 232, if there is some national security concerns, USA can impose tariffs. And Section 301, IPR, that is intellectual property rights. If these two concerns are there, so on the basis of these concerns, USA can impose tariffs on any of the countries. Again, you do not have to remember this. I'm just sharing with you because it is mentioned in the editorial. These actions bypass WTO mechanism, reflecting a growing trend of unilateralism, and it is spoiling what? It is spoiling the multilateral rule-based global order, and it is all about unilateral, like only USA is taking global trade decisions and no other country or no other international body for which it has been established, it's not playing its role really well. Then the USA has criticized WTO's handling of China's role in global trade, and USA is also blaming कि WTO आप China का favor कर रहे हो. You are not understanding what sort of game China is playing, because China is providing subsidies to the Chinese goods goods and services in their own country, and then they are dumping all those products, all those goods and services in the global market. So USA is asking WTO that you are doing some sort of favor, and I do not like it. So China's role in global trade regarding its flooding of market with cheap exports while restricting access to its domestic market. Now what it is doing कि कोई भी मेरी कंट्री में आके अपना प्रोडक्ट नहीं बेचेगा, बट जो मैं अपनी कंट्री में प्रोडक्ट प्रोड्यूस कर रहा हूं सब्सिडीज दे के, मैंने लैंड का कोई रेंट कम कर दिया, मैंने बिजली कम कर दी, मैंने बहुत सब्सिडी दी, पानी का मैंने कम कर दिया, बिजली के मैंने बिल कम कर दिए. China, all sort of subsidies are being provided. Automatically the cost of the goods and services would be less, and then they pick up all those goods and throw it in the global market, and that lead to unfair competition for the other traders. Then comes the next, that is India's role and challenges in the WTO. Again, India has been vocal critic of some WTO policies, particularly regarding agriculture and food security. See, agriculture in India, it's a very politically sensitive topic, right? We have around 46% of population dependent on it. So if WTO is saying to India, do not provide subsidies to the agriculture sector, India would not listen to it. India would be saying that our country demand is something else. We cannot agree to WTO, and we are bound to provide subsidies to the farmers, to the agriculture sector, in order for the agriculture to grow, because we have around 46% of population dependent on this sector for their earnings, for their livelihood, and for their survival. Then India is concerned about the fairness of WTO agriculture subsidy rules. Developed nations more leeway have led to stalled negotiations, consistently objected. Now one more thing, the WTO, the India is saying कि कोई भी लेबर स्टैंडर्ड की बात है या एनवायरमेंटल प्रोटेक्शन लॉस की बात है, वो WTO डिस्कस नहीं करेगी, राइट? WTO जॉब इज जस्ट टू लुक आफ्टर द ट्रेड मैटर्स. अगर लेबर की कोई बात है, हु विल डिस्कस? इंटरनेशनल लेबर ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस वुड डिस्कस. अगर एनवायरमेंटल प्रोटेक्शंस की बात है, वी हैव अदर मेनी प्लेटफॉर्म्स जहां पे मीटिंग्स होती है. सपोज इफ देयर इज अ कॉप ऑफ UNFCCC, यूनाइटेड नेशन फ्रेमवर्क कन्वेंशन ऑन क्लाइमेट चेंज, तो हम वहां पे बात करेंगे एनवायरमेंटल या क्लाइमेट नेगोशिएशंस की. WTO would only deal with the matters related to trade policies of the country and nothing else. Then comes the next, that is impact of WTO in action on global trade. The WTO has failed to address the underlying issues of global trade imbalances and unfair practices. I've just told you unfair practices by the China and global trade balances. I've also told you कि बहुत ज़्यादा trade ऊपर नीचे हो जाता है, and that is the reason. Then comes the next, the inability to evolve with changing global dynamics has led to frustration and calls for reform, and that is what USA is doing. If WTO is not free, if WTO is not fair, why would I listen to WTO? And that is why USA has taken the power in its own hands, and unilaterally it is imposing tariffs on the countries. Then comes the, with this we have completed this editorial. Then comes the prelim Sarthi. Under prelim Sarthi we have just one, that is Langia Sora tribal group. So you can see the picture here. Can you see the picture here? It's been written that women of the Langia Sora tribal group to celebrate mango harvest in Gunupur region of Raigad district, Odisha. Now which state? This state is Odisha. Now epics, now this tribe is believed that they are mentioned in Ramayana as well. Ramayana and Mahabharata. Ramayana and Mahabharata. Its other names are, that is Sravara. Sravara is one of its another name. The tribe is also known by this name, Sravara. Then other states, these tribes are majorly found in Odisha, but there are other states as well where Sora tribal group is found. That is Andhra Pradesh, then we have MP, then we have Chhattisgarh, and we have Assam. So all these states also have few of the Sora tribe, but again majority of them are in Odisha. Which language they speak? They speak Sora language, Sora, which is also a Munda language. Again, quickly revise. Which state? Sora tribal group, Odisha. Epics, Ramayana, Mahabharata mein it's believed that the name was mentioned there. Other names is Sarabara. Then other states, it's found in Andhra Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Assam, which language they speak? They speak Sora language, which is also a Munda language. With this, we have come to the end of today's session, as today's newspaper was full of the news regarding the recent terror attack in Pahalgam, Anantnag district, Jammu Kashmir. But let's see, hopefully in future newspapers there would be more articles about India-Saudi Arabia relationship because of the recent PM visit to Saudi Arabia, as well as JD Vance visit. So India-America editorials, their defense ties, their bilateral relations, and once they come, I will try to cover them holistically in all possible way. Thank you so much, Sonali. Thank you, Ruchi. Thank you so much, everyone. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat. Thank you.